to the Matsu chapter of AMAC Action. I know we got some new faces here, and welcome. Glad to see you. If you're not an AMAC member already, go to amac.us and you can sign up there. There's also, I never remember the guy's name, but there's a guy he's got a radio talk show.
Chad Benson.
Chad
Benson.
Chad Benson. If you go to Chad Benson, he actually can become an AMAC member for free. So it's free good. It's $16 a year, and then it goes up from there for 4 years, 5 years, for life, things like that. The good news about AMAC is that this chapter has been now, Tom, we've been doing this 2 years now? About that. We've gone from zip to about 350, and that's emails that we've got, so we can reach out to about 350 people.
We actually have about 300 people on the email list, but specific addresses, about 280.
Okay, about 300 people. Alaska-wide, we're now up to 7,600, last count I saw. And nationally, AMAC's only been around since 2007. We're now up to 2.2 million people. 2.2 million. So we're fast growing. We're not making AARP happy because we're pulling their people away over to us, so which is fine by us. So, all that said, you want to go ahead and lead us in prayer?
Oh, sure.
You always do a good prayer.
Well, I have it on my phone.
I know you do.
I'm not good off the top of my head.
Do y'all want to stand for prayer?
Dear Almighty Father in heaven, bless all the people in attendance, and especially those that truly put their lives in harm's way on a daily basis to make our life safer. We are so thankful for your love. Please continue to guide us as we strive every day to live your will. These things we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Greg, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Who? Me?
Greg.
Oh.
No. Okay. Air Force. I thought your first name was Greg.
I pledge allegiance
To
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Suzanne. There she is. Okay. We have first thing we need to do is get a treasurer's report. So, Carol, you want to do a quick treasurer's report?
No.
No?
Well, you got the answer.
I'm always outnumbered.
I just couldn't resist. Okay. Last month, we had a very low donation of over $10. I hope we do better today, guys. We really need the money. We did give a donation to Defend Alaska Elections, who was here last month. We donated $100 to them. So our balance now is $657.56.
Thank you. $657.
Yes.
Talking about that, especially for the folks that are new, what we do is that money stays within our chapter only. We don't get any funding from AMAC at headquarters. Unlike AARP that's got multi-millions of dollars grants from the U.S. government and all sorts of stuff, they got frugal bucks. AMAC doesn't. So what that money is used for is for supporting, vote no on Prop 1, vote no on Prop 2. That money is also used for, if we need paper products, we need to do, copiers, things like that. Also, once a year, we do a conference down in the lower 48, and we have used some of that money to help me fly down for the conference, because it's pretty spendy. And this coming year, it's going to be in Florida. I'm not sure if I want to go to Florida or not. But they promised that the next year they're going to do Phoenix, which I'll definitely go to. It's a short flight. So we a lot of the western states and Midwest states have been screaming and hollering about why we keep on doing the East Coast all the time. So we did one in San Antonio, and then we've done one in Virginia, and then now this coming one is going to be in Florida. So hopefully the next one will be in Phoenix. So that'll help for that. So that's where that money's going to, and it stays within the chapter, and that's all it's used for. Any questions on that? Okay. We have a very special guest speaker. We got Suzanne Downing from Muscatine, Alaska. Everybody's read Muscatine, Alaska. Everybody knows who she is. So, Suzanne, come on up, and I'll hand you the mic, this fancy mic, and you can have at it. Oh, and there's a jar in the back there with Tom for
Donations.
For donations.
All right. Is this working?
Yep.
I think so. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Suzanne Downing from Muscatine, Alaska, and I am absolutely thrilled to be here today to see you. Beautiful day here in the Mat-Su. What a wonderful fall we've had in Alaska, isn't it? And we've had some really great election results, too. I wanted to talk a little bit today about Muscatine, Alaska, and what it is, and give you an update, because you are sort of stakeholders in the project. And I see it as a project. I don't really see it as a business. I'm trying to support myself with it, yes, but I also see it as a project that's a group project with conservatives in Alaska. I get a lot of help from people, so thank you all for being supporters. Before I start, I just really want to go through the room fast and find out who it is that I'm speaking to and hear who you are. So I've got a request. I want you to just tell me your name and tell me where you were born. And we'll start with you.
Judith Hollander, Excelsior Springs, Missouri.
Missouri. Very good.
Bob Ellis, Washington, D.C.
Bob Ellis.
Mike Coons, Ontario, Oregon.
Ontario, Oregon.
Kelly Leader, Colorado Springs,
Colorado Springs.
Lynn McCabe, Seattle.
Seattle.
Lee Underwood, Burley, Idaho.
Idaho.
Bert,
Bert. I'm sorry, Bert.
Politidic, born and raised in Alaska.
Where are you in Alaska?
I'm Faye Graham Boyce, and I was born in Fort Dodge, Iowa.
Idaho.
Carol Halsey, and I was born in Cranford, New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Robert Coulter, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Milwaukee.
Gary Smith, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Mark.
Margaret Nelson, Juneau, Alaska.
Yeah, of course, my hometown. And I missed you. Well, your name and where you were born?
Oh, I don't want to admit where I was born.
Where you were born.
Where I was born? I don't want to admit it.
Okay.
Jimmy Driscoll, Carrollton, Texas.
Carrollton, Texas.
Andrew Lowe in Tennessee.
Tennessee.
David Wilson, California.
California.
Gene Morrison, Anchorage.
Anchorage.
Woo-hoo. Becky Knapp, Newton, Iowa, and I lived in Fort Dodge.
Okay.
Mel Knapp, Colorado.
Colorado again. I missed you, right? No, I got you. The red hat, the magnet hat's back there.
Vicki Prenti, Palo Alto, California.
Palo Alto, beautiful area.
Tom Prenti, Santa Monica, California.
Santa Monica, once upon a time, a beautiful area. When you were born, it was a beautiful area.
Yeah.
All right, back there. Help me out.
Mike McConaughey, Santa Ana, California.
Beautiful. Named a freeway after you. Who else is way in the back?
Aline Cash, Brooklyn, New York.
New York, I'm the first one in here. Anybody else that I missed?
You got two that just walked in.
Two that just walked in. Oh,
Steve Baker, born in America.
very good. And I guess, that's the point. We're born in America. And I'm Suzanne Downing. I was born in Seaside, Oregon. And so we're all from somewhere, and a few of us, including my son, was born in Alaska, and you probably also have children born here too. But I was raised in Juneau. Wasn't a liberal town when Margaret and I grew up there. It was actually a logging town and a mining town, and there were a few government workers.
Absolutely.
But that was an era when all of a sudden oil was discovered in 1968 in Prudhoe Bay, and the money started flowing in, and the government started growing and expanding. And so that town has changed substantially. I remember once upon a time, you remember Skinner's Ace Hardware and Brown and Oliver. You go and you could get your halibut jacket and your wool pants and your Uniroyals, and that's pretty much what everybody wore. And now life is different, much different for us all. But I wanted to just talk a little bit about Mustard Alaska's growth over the last year. We've grown to be about 17,000 readers a day on average. We're up to now way over 12 million readers since the beginning of the website 4 years ago. And to just rewind a little bit, it was begun as a project in the Republican Party. When I became the communication director for the Republican Party, they had no money. They never have any money. The Republican Party never has any money to spend. So I said, well, what can I do as communication director? We're going to send out press releases all day about the shenanigans of our party? No. We need to knit our tribe together of Republicans, and we need to share information and help each other understand Republicans across the state and what they're doing and share ideas. So the newsletter started. It was a great newsletter, and all of a sudden, more than just Republicans wanted to read about it. Undeclareds wanted to read about it. And pretty soon the news media, they wanted to get on the list and find out what we're doing. And so they were always trying to get on the newsletter list, and I was always kicking them off. It's like, nah, this isn't for you people. We're not going to allow you to use this for opposition research. So about a year into that project, it looked like it was growing so fast. It needed something else. It needed a website. So in 2015, the newsletter started. In 2016, I started the website so we could do rapid response every day. But it also became apparent that this thing needed to get out of the party, because the party is typically a pretty dysfunctional place. And what we really need is a way to knit together conservatives and help conservatives understand concepts and feel like they have a champion in the media, because we were just getting killed by the ADN primarily, but also just the collective mindset of all of the media, right? They have herd mentality. And so I started the website, and I decided to launch it out of the party. And I said, stay with the party until the general election of 2016, which I did. And we got somehow Donald Trump elected. I was stunned. Couldn't just blow me over the feather here. But we got Donald Trump elected, and then I launched off independently, and it has been an independent project ever since. Still considered a project. I thank you all for just letting me update you. I have approved 52,000 comments on stories on Must Read Alaska in 4 years. It's just amazing to see the amount of engagement that it gets. So very, very happy that it is achieving its goals, which is knitting us together as conservatives and telling our side of the story, and I really don't worry about their side of the story. It is quite well covered. So I thought, well, I'd talk a little bit about the elections coming up. I wanted to have a show of hands. I want to ask you, who do you think is going to win for president? Raise your hand if you think Donald Trump is going to win. Okay, good. Now, I'm trying to be objective here. I'm not sure. I'm glad you're all very sure. Is there anybody who thinks Joe Biden's going to win? Yeah, I kind of heard. I don't know. I mean, you see the polls, but I also remember last time the polls said the exact same thing that they are saying now. They gave Hillary Clinton a huge advantage. He was getting slaughtered. I was trying to adjust my mind to having to say President Clinton again. And yet, we saw what happened, which was actually that she won the popular vote and he managed the electoral map better. Well, we've got a very different condition this time, and I don't know what to think. The polls say one thing, the electoral map may say something entirely different. So now let's go down to the Dan Sullivan race, and against the very problematic Al Gross, who's spreading a lot of lies. I don't know who's going to win that race, but now let's take a show of hands. Who here thinks that Dan Sullivan's going to win?
God, I hope.
Okay, that's really great. That's great. I'm glad to see that. I hope he does. Anybody here think that Al Gross is going to win objectively?
I think he might.
Yeah. I worry because there is so much money coming in, and I'm talking tens of millions. By the end of this race, this entire race between Gross and Sullivan, who's being outspent about 10-1 at this point, could be the most expensive in Alaska history. Now, the last one was very expensive with Mark Begich and Dan Sullivan. It was, I think it reached $50 million once you get all the IEs involved. But we are really starting to see that climb, and we're seeing a ton of money pouring in right now. Just this last week, they booked $4 million worth of TV and radio ads for Al Gross. And this is a group that just formed up. Waterford Strategies is behind it. Jim Lotzfeld is behind it. Jim Lotzfeld is a political operative here in the state who does, actually lives in Oregon, but he does stuff for Democrats in Leesmore Council. And so it is possible that we're being so outspent that Dan Sullivan may have a hard time. And that this comes to the point where every vote does matter, right? And every one of us has a responsibility to just start spreading the word in our circles of friends. You have a question?
I have a thought. It's a question.
Okay.
Good morning to you. I'm curious that $50 million, whatever, in Alaska, trickles down to supporting our economy.
Yes.
And
yes.
that's the bright side of things, as I see it. So
Well,
my question becomes, my thought becomes, all right, so who, as businesses, actually do well, but they don't want to say how well they do, with their income from promoting left-wing stuff?
Okay, primarily.
Who is that?
Primarily printing companies.
Like who?
Well, like just the various printing companies that are around town. Many of the material around town is being printed locally, like Cricks printers and so forth.
Printing company.
The television and radio, that money doesn't stay in state quite as much, but I think that Margaret's a better person to answer this question than I am, because she is like an expert in this. Margaret, what do you have to say about this?
Well, I was going to say that we know from the last few elections that people like to spend money on elections up here because it's the cheapest Senate seat that they can buy.
The cheap date.
It's a cheap, so people outside like to buy, like to spend money on our elections because they can buy a Senate seat.
That is the case. If you didn't hear her, she said this is the cheapest media market in the country, and therefore it is a pickup. And of course, when you have things happening like in South Carolina with, if you can't hear me, I have a very soft voice.
Actually, I was thinking that perhaps when people are in the audience or speaking, that they might use a microphone and let everyone else hear.
Yeah, we can do that. Because I'm hearing you.
You can hear me okay? So we're really cheap, but what happened in South Carolina with that one race where they believed the Democrat was going to win, and then all of a sudden a big scandal erupted over his affairs, and now it looks like they'll hold that seat for a Republican. They shifted all their money up to Alaska. They realized they're not going to pick up that seat, so take all that money up to Alaska and try to get Dan Sullivan, since it seems like a pretty close race. And with the air bombing they're doing on us, with the radio, TV, I mean, you just can't hardly watch a show anymore, right? It's time after time, and it's very, very negative against Dan, and very much a savage kind of approach. And this is classic of the people that they're using. Jim Lotzfeld is known for this. So, I mean, and unfortunately, we may see that seat flip. I don't know. It's going to be all up to all of us. I will say this, that the Matanuska Valley here is our strong suit. And if we can get everyone in the Mat suit to vote, and we have a lot of conservatives out here, but we also have a lot of people who don't want to be bothered by the government. They don't trust their elected officials. They're tired of being told lies, and they just don't trust people. And they don't want to go out and vote because they just know that the whole system is just a mess. And they're right. But we still need to get them to go out to vote. Otherwise, we get Al Gross in there, and that means we get Chuck Schumer running the Senate. And it's Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden. And that means we get the state of Puerto Rico and the state of Washington, D.C., and we will never again have a Republican leadership. Those will be blue states.
They're even saying Guam.
Yeah,
I heard that too.
possibly. So you see why it's so important that we hold this seat, because this one actually could be the key. So now let's get down to the Don Young campaign. Don Young versus Antifa elites. Now, how do we think that Don Young is going to do? Is he going to win? Show of hands. Not as many hands going up.
Yeah.
How about Elise Galvin? Do you think she might win? I'm seeing some people, they don't want to raise their hands because nobody wants to vote for her, but I'm seeing a little bit of waffling there. Well, I have a special guest for you today. It's a surprise. And I have the co-chair of the Don Young campaign here to talk about Don Young and what has been going on in his campaign and why we should have actually quite a bit of optimism about his chances for election. I'd like to introduce Nick Begich. Please come up to the front, Nick, and I'm going to yield the... Okay, I'm going to cut my mic and give you the mic to talk about what you have seen, and welcome to the AMAC meeting.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Has everybody here met Nick Begich?
No.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your family history.
Sure. So I can do that. Well, it's interesting that I'm here with you today with AMAC. I was actually, it's interesting because I was raised by my grandparents on my mom's side of the family. So folks wonder, hey, how could you possibly be a conservative Republican? Well, my grandparents were a strong influence in my life, and they were Bible Belt, Missouri, Boot Hill, Missouri, Republican Christians. And so that's how I was raised. That's how my sister was raised in the church, very conservative. So moved back to Alaska about 17 years ago, and have just started to get involved in the political process in the last few years. And so it's my pleasure to be a co-chair right now for our Congressman for all of Alaska, Don Young. So
very good. And just to be clear, your grandfather.
My grandfather is Nick Begich, Sr. He preceded Don Young in that office. And of course, some of you may know this already. He disappeared in a plane crash prior to that election, and Don Young won in a special election and has been in Congress since that time.
So it's a very unique situation that now we have Nick Begich's grandson co-chairing the campaign for Don Young. That's just an amazing story. So now you've been to Southeast Alaska, and you just got back last night because I talked to you last night as you're on your way home. And you went to Ketchikan, Juneau, and Sitka. And that Ketchikan is a sort of a red town, but Juneau is pretty blue and Sitka is very blue. But tell us about your experience down there in Southeast Alaska.
So this is actually the second time that we've been through Southeast over the last several months. We also, on our prior trip, hit Petersburg and Wrangell, in addition to Ketchikan and Juneau. And I have to say, it's fascinating when you go down to coastal Alaska, in Southeast Alaska, and you see the various communities. Southeast Alaska, as sort of a cohort of communities, has a sort of very blue reputation, but I will say I've never been in a more conservative town than Wrangell, Alaska, ever. Okay, there had to be every fifth or sixth house had a Trump flag, bumper sticker, sign, or all three. And in fact, I walked up. We were doing some door knocking down there, and I walked up to a home, and it had 2 Trump flags, 2 Trump signs, and 2 Obama signs this gentleman had actually made on his own anti-Obama signs. And the person I was door knocking with said, "All right, Nick, you got this one." So I walked up to the door and I knocked on the door, and things are going well, and I introduced myself. I'm Nick Begich, and he says, "You got 10 seconds to get off my property before I go get my gun." I said, "Sir, I assure you I'm a conservative Republican." He said, "All right, you can stay, but since you're out of town, I have to get my mask." So he walks over to his truck and he gets a catcher's mask full of holes. Absolutely true story. But anyway, yeah, it's amazing. So Southeast has a blue reputation, but there's a lot of conservatives down there. And you'd be surprised how many conservatives are in Juneau and are in Sitka that are very strongly engaged in this election cycle. They understand the importance of this election cycle, and they'll be voting.
Very good, very good. Well, so tell me about Ketchikan and what the mood is like down there.
Yeah, so Ketchikan is, for those who've been around Alaska for more than a few years, you know Ketchikan used to also be a really big logging community. And the left, through the roadless rule in Tongass, shut that community down effectively and essentially deleted the logging industry from Southeast Alaska, which really impacted Ketchikan in a negative way. And so the town has shifted a little bit, but you know, a lot of people are still there that remember what the town used to be and the economic activity that used to be going on down in Ketchikan. And so that region has actually been represented by an independent who caucuses with the Democrats in Juneau, Dan Ortez. And there's a pretty exciting race going on down there right now with Leslie Becker. And Leslie Becker is the Republican nominee, and I think she's within striking distance. It's a pretty exciting race right now.
Very good, very good. Well, one last story about Wrangell. I guess it was you who told me that the school district, the kids go to school and everybody's got swag on. They've got Trump t-shirts, Trump MAGA hats, they're wearing Trump shoes, they got Trump wristwatch, and the school finally had to make a rule. You can wear all this Trump stuff, but you cannot wear a Trump flag as a cape to school. That's where they went. So they had to kind of draw the line on the kids. So it is kind of Trump town down there in Wrangell. Very good. Well, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate your report. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the Mat-Su or the rest of the state?
Yeah. So when we went through that previous cycle in 2018, the Mat-Su and the Kenai had elevated turnout and allowed Republicans to win across the board in that election cycle. And what we know, folks say, well, Anchorage is turning blue. I like to say what we're seeing is conservative flight out of Anchorage and into the Mat-Su Valley, where people can be around like-minded neighbors and friends and family, right? And so I think what we've really seen is we've seen a migration, a shift out here to the Mat-Su. It's so important to make sure that everyone, not just in this room, but everyone who's a conservative is out here voting this year. Alaska is in play. You heard Suzanne talk about that. She knows she's attached to every major campaign in the state. Alaska's in play. But what we know about Alaskans is that we're conservative. We're a red state. And we know the values that we come from. We know the places that we come from. And we know what made America great. All these folks, I was listening in the back as you were talking about the places that you're from. You're from these places, but why are you here? Right?
Freedom.
You're in Alaska. That's right, freedom. Because we value those things. We have a core, a conservative core. You may or may not be a registered Republican, but you got a conservative core. And that's a set of values that you know this country was built on. And we need to make sure all the people who feel that way are showing up at the polls. And I know that if we all show up at the polls, we're going to win this race. We're going to win every major race in this state, statewide. And let me tell you, I've been talking about this. Hope you give me an extra moment here. Talk about the composition of the Senate, right? The composition of the Senate is close. Okay, we've got a slight advantage right now. But when you hear it, and these aren't my words, Cook Political Report, talking about Iowa being in play, Ohio being in play, Kansas being in play, Everyone's got to show up. Everyone's got to show up to vote. One interesting thing, you talk about the 12th Amendment. So under the 12th Amendment, which is what created the Electoral College, if one of the candidates does not receive at least 270 votes, there's an interesting process that occurs. What happens is every state in the House gets one vote. Every state in the House gets one vote. So the 53 legislators from California, they come together and they say, okay, this is how our state's going to vote. And however many they've got in New York, they come together, this is how many they're going to come together and say, this is the person that we're going to vote for president. Well, the Democrats understand this, and guess what the advantage is, Republican, Democrat in the House by states?
Republican.
It's 26 Republican states. 26, it's a knife's edge. So this House race matters a lot. This House race may matter more than you would ever imagine it would matter.
Nick?
Yes?
If that comes down to that point, does that happen before January 20th or after January 20th?
That's a good question. I don't absolutely know the answer to that. I believe it's before, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yes, it is. I'm almost positive it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is too, but I've had people say that because if we, God forbid, were to flip the House went even more communist, we could lose after January 20th. But right now, we could win.
It's a good question.
Yeah, a question. You say states each have one. Do DC and Puerto Rico get any?
Presently, no, they do not.
Okay.
Yes.
And rumor has it, I don't know if this is true, if by January 20th they are not able to determine the outcome of the race, doesn't Nancy Pelosi step into the presidency?
Some say no, some say yes.
I don't know the answer to that.
Others may have more knowledge about this than I, but I have heard that, and I don't know if that's true or not.
It is.
It is true.
Are there any other questions for Nick?
Yeah, I got.
Just as a follow-up on that, if that were true, if that were to occur, that would be temporary until such time as the elected president could be seated. That's also why the Senate matters so much, okay? Because we got a 4-4 court, depending on how you interpret Justice Roberts' position. And, you know, we need to make sure that we don't have ties in the Supreme Court right now in this country. We cannot have that level of constitutional crisis given the backdrop that we've observed for the last 12 months.
The question I've got is I'm seeing there's one particular radio ad that has really got me PO'd. And that is that guy that's 2 years older than Don, that lists all these great things that he's for, pro-Second Amendment, all these things, and then he goes, oh, but that's a lease. What's Don, is there any, you guys doing any, I haven't heard any really solid pushback on that, because that guy, he's effective. I think he may be more effective than we want to think.
Well, you bring up a great point, and the campaigns are very dynamic. You know, you see ads like this. We just saw this ad a few days ago, and so yeah, absolutely, we always are looking at responding to these kinds of remarks that are made. But I would just say, look, you know, if you list all these things that sound like Don Young, then why should we change? We have Don Young, right? And Don Young's doing a great job. Let me tell you something about Don. So I was down in DC, and I met with his staff. And I said, all right, folks, I just need a one-pager. Just give me a one-pager, maybe just some bullets about what he's done the last couple of years. Can you send me that? They gave me a 47-page document of all the things that Don Young has done, not over his whole career, in the last 2 years. In the last 2 years. Don Young is so effective. I was meeting with folks down there at a fundraising event. And I said, you know, tell me about Don. What do people say about Don down here in DC? They said, this guy is a legend. You don't understand the asset that you have on behalf of Alaska down here in DC. Don Young, he's on powerful committees. People come to him for advice. They ask him to co-sponsor deal after deal. I mean, he's getting so much done for this state. He may be more effective now than he ever has been. And so these accusations, oh, well, he hasn't been effective, he's lost some clout, absolutely false. And they're leveled by a group that obviously has every incentive to suggest he's not effective, but by a candidate who, quite frankly, has a lot of jobs and no experience. A lot of jobs, no experience.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, one more question?
Oh,
Okay,
please.
one more question for Nick?
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Yes, as a Republican operative, I've had a question, thank you, I've had a question for quite some time that I've not known anyone to ask, and you're the man. Don, I've had mixed feelings about him over the years, as a lot of us have had. He's certainly the best guy out there now. However, he's 87? Nobody lives forever. Does the party have plans ahead, because he's going to leave, whether we like it or not? And are the Republicans then going to run around like chickens with their heads off, chasing themselves, trying to come up with, well, this guy will do, while the Democrats field somebody and they're in?
I think what he's trying to say is, do you plan to run?
Well, hey.
Right now, you said it. Don Young is the best man for this job. He's been the best man for this job, and we need to make sure Don Young wins this race. You raise an important point.
But are you planning ahead?
And I think that there are plans, right, to make sure that this state stays red, that we're represented well in D.C., and that's something that's on people's minds, and I can tell you it's on the congressman's mind. And what he has said for many years is, look, I'm waiting. Someone show up. I'm ready. But no one's shown up who can do a better job than he can, and he knows it. Because he knows that town, and he knows the issues, and he knows this state better than anyone. And so, yeah, there's been conversations about all those sorts of things. But right now, it's about making sure that Alaska is represented as best as it can be, and that person's Don Young.
How is his health?
He's healthy. I mean, let me tell you something. He's got so much doggone energy. I mean, he could just about outrun any of us on the team.
Wow.
Yeah, he's got a lot of enthusiasm, and he's got as much enthusiasm as you could expect anyone to have for this state.
I keep saying last question, but forget about the last question thing. You know, this is too much fun.
Along that same line, we need to be considering a person to take Murkowski's spot in 2 years. And there's been a lot of talk. Who?
Anybody.
Appreciate the comment. Yeah, thank you for that.
One other thing I can say about Don Young, he's sharp as a tack.
He is. He's absolutely sharp.
I
Absolutely.
hadn't seen him in over 40 years, and I said something to him the last time I'd seen him, and he says I was playing baseball in Fort Yukon.
Wow.
That quick.
Wow. That is impressive. That is impressive. And I'll tell you, just on that point, when we travel around, you know, the history that he's aware of. He remembers so much about the history and the progression of the state from prior to statehood all the way through to today. And so many of the promises that were made under the agreements that we have with the federal government that haven't really been fully honored. He remembers those things, and he continues to bring those items up in Congress and pointing to the founding documents and the documents that brought us in as a state, documents that created national parks, and saying, hey, Alaskans have rights, and these rights need to be honored. This is part of the agreement, and thank God that Don Young is there to remind folks of these things.
So of all these accomplishments that Don Young has, and I'm assuming Sullivan has a few, why doesn't the Republican Party put that out?
It's a great question. We are working so hard to put out all of this information. It's difficult right now because if you think about sort of I like to say in this state we have what I call the initiatives industry. Okay? We have this initiatives industry where an initiative kicks up and then someone's got to defend themselves. And right now, just in the the ballot initiatives that we've had on the ballot this year, there's already been close to $25 million allocated in spending just on those two. Then you talk about the Senate race, And now we're talking maybe 50 million, maybe more, right? So now we're up to $75 million. Well, if you think about how much voice occurs on a regular news channel, there's only so much time space available within these windows where people are watching the TV, or they're reading the paper, or they're checking their mail, or they're listening to the radio, and it just sucks all the air out of the room. And then you get down to our race, which run every 2 years, and we're getting outraised 3, 5, 6, 7 to 1. And so while we're putting these messages out as much as we can, there's just not a lot of opportunity left as we approach the election day to get everything that we'd like to say said. And it's a great point. I wish we could do more. I wish we had more resources to tell folks about all the things that we are doing. But it's just a reality of the economics of elections today.
It is, and of course, both Dan Sullivan and Don Young are being intensely outraised. We've got another question.
I have a comment. I think you and all these other campaign people that are helping out the Republicans that are running, don't forget Eagle River. You're talking about your conservatives in the valley. You're talking about your reds in Anchorage. People in Eagle River, don't forget them. You really got to get to them.
It's an outstanding point, and I appreciate that, and I will carry that back to the campaign.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. We do not want to take any of these conservative regions of the state for granted, and Eagle River is a very important one.
They could go either way.
Thank you.
If
That's
you've
good.
ever heard of Eagle Exit.
Eagle
Exit. Yeah.
Mike
Check it out.
Tavallero is a contact.
For you, because I definitely want to talk about more stuff in the elections too. I have to do this as a disclaimer. AMAC is a 501c4. We cannot endorse a candidate at AMAC.
Right.
And neither can the chapter. You, as independent, conservative people, you vote for who you want to vote for. And you're here, I saw the hands. That's all cool. I have to say that from a disclaimer standpoint.
Thank you, very important.
That's right. Are there any other questions for Nick?
Yes. One thing that just keeps coming up is the cost of all this campaign financing, both for ballot measures as well as for candidates. And I've become convinced myself that it's not going to change without a constitutional amendment. And I'm wondering if you have a feeling about the Convention of States possibility as a way of raising a constitutional amendment that would change the way we finance campaigns. My personal feeling is that there's about 5 things that have to be involved in that. One of them is contributions can be only allowed from living biological human beings of voting age. No PACs, no unions, no corporations, no dogs, cats, or whatever else can contribute. Second thing would be that that the contributions that a candidate or a measure receives could only come from the geographical area affected by that election. And the third thing then is that there'd be a strict limit on how much a person could donate. And then the fourth thing is that full disclosure of everybody that contributes. And fifth is felony penalties for violations. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are. I think the cost of and the dark money and solicitations that I get from Florida, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, every place else for support of this, that, or the other candidate is absurd. And I just want to know what your thoughts are.
It's a great question, and I can tell you that it's interesting because you hear a lot from the left in our campaign talking about getting money out of politics, but yet we're getting outraised 5 to 1 by groups that are coming in from outside, including super PACs and PACs. And so it's sort of one of those things, do as I say, not as I do situations, right? But what the congressman has said, and he was talking about this in Southeast last week, is that he said he is working right now on a bill in the House that would, as you said, the second point that you made, only permit donations from within the district. So that only the people that are involved in the activity going on in each House district, which for us is the full state of Alaska, would have a say in the outcome of those elections. And I know that there's probably folks in this room who feel differently, but that's, I'm here on behalf of the congressman, and that's an important issue for him, because he's, in his view, there has been way too much money allocated to the political process, and it's corrupted the idea that you are represented adequately in DC.
That's right. Absolutely.
There's a lot of people represented, but it's a year that it's being represented.
Currently, at the moment, I've been telling people to do an experiment out there, and we've got Antifa, who has been being promoted out there left and right. Due to Facebook policies, I'm going to have to break this apart just slightly so that this doesn't get flagged. But if you were to take Antifa and then take another part of the equation and put a .com behind it, it currently, if you were to do this on Google, it takes you directly to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's website for donating to their campaign. And they're raising funds using Antifa as their platform to be able, and Google is directly directing it to their website. Also, if you are to go to Black Lives Matter and you go and click on their donation link, it takes you directly to Act Blue. This, when we're talking about being outraised as the conservative party out there, or is there anything in play right now to combat this that is going on when the other platform out there is utilizing the most terroristic groups that we have plaguing our nations right now to outraise everybody?
It's a great question, a good point. I was encouraged recently when the president declared both the KKK and Antifa as terrorist organizations, right?
Yeah.
This is good. This is good. We got to call this stuff out. We can't be afraid to call this stuff out. This is anti-American. It's beyond socialism. We're straying into Marxism at that point, and it's extremely dangerous. I mean, these are dangerous ideologies. And what I've told folks is, look, I'm still old enough to remember when the Iron Curtain fell. There's a lot of people who are growing up that don't have any knowledge of that. It's just a story in a textbook, if that. Right?
And we don't use textbooks anymore.
And we don't use textbooks, yeah. So we're not, it's difficult if you think about this from a child's perspective who's growing up today that didn't see all the horrors of communism. What Stalin and Lenin did to his people, right? They didn't grow up, they didn't understand just how dangerous this kind of thing can be. And what you see is you've got this activity that's being fomented, right, by the far left. And these are the things that precipitate revolutions throughout the world, and they have to be absolutely stopped. And so when I see people raising money off of this kind of activity, that is absolutely wrong, and it's anti-American. Yes?
The children today are not getting a good history. And the last time we had an issue such as this, it cost the lives of 660,000 people, and was eventually resolved at Appomattox. But that's, when you look at what happened in the late 50s and the early 60s, 18, you will see a lot of similarities.
Thank you for your
comment. I want to close because I'm going to get Suzanne as well. The really bad thing is just came out on the news yesterday. The two people that are running for mayor of the most communist city in the United States, Portland, Oregon, had a skirt on with Mao, Stalin, Lenin, Chavez. And she is a communist, and she says she is Antifa, and running against Wheeler, who is a communist and is Antifa. So that's how crazy it's gone.
Wow.
I just want to thank Nick. I'm going to close off questions for him now, so because we're getting toward the noon hour, and this has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm so glad you came. And I want to just point out that
this young man has a question.
that Nicholas IV has a question, and
What's your
I
question,
would not
buddy?
deny him. Please.
Speak up.
I do understand what communism is. I can't really say it right, but. And I also think I do have a good history of the nation.
Oh, excellent.
Thank God.
Wow.
He goes to St. John's private school in Eagle River.
What did she say?
Way to go, buddy.
What did they say?
He does understand what communism is, and he does have a good history education.
Oh.
And he is, how old are you, Nicholas?
8.5.
8.5. And so that's the future of our country right there. And Nicholas, would you just come forward? I want to introduce you. He's a friend of mine as well. And Nick is also a friend of mine. And I think that it's really important for those of us. I'm 66. And so we are of age where we cherish how wonderful it is to have younger people who are conservatives, who are showing up and who are getting involved. And we're just very proud of you for for supporting your father in all this work that he's doing to get Don Young. These are very close friends of mine, and I just please give them a hand.
Here, I'll take it.
So before I close up, are there any other questions that you have for Mustard, Alaska? Please go ahead.
Well, the problem I have, and I know other people do, I talked to my daughter about it, is we have to be able to talk to people and tell them the right story, tell them the conservative story. And my daughter said, well, I don't know how to talk to my friends about that. And so that's one of the things we as conservatives need to be schooled on. We need to be told what kind of points you make and how you deliver that to your friends so that they can understand why they need to vote the conservative way and not the socialist
Yes,
agenda.
Matt, so how do you talk to people about conservative values? And we all live our individual lives and everybody's different. But I will say that one of the most important techniques is to ask questions. So when you hear somebody saying they want to vote for Joe Biden or something like that, and of course, as I know, AMAC is neutral on that, but I'm using it as an example. And you would want to ask them why. And you want to just keep asking people, well, what does it mean when you say that, Medicare for all? How much would that cost the country? You just keep asking the questions because you cannot change somebody's mind. You know you cannot. You cannot lecture somebody into being a conservative. You can't berate them. All you can do is help them. Here's an example from my own life. When I was growing up, it was about the time when Roe versus Wade was being decided. And I thought it was a great thing because women's live, right? And so I kind of grew up in that era. And then when I got pregnant, I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Well, I was in Juneau at the time, and I went down to the library, and they had books, actual books at the time, back in the day. And it was a book about the stages of life. And I looked at it and said, oh my gosh, that's a baby. That's, okay, abortion, fine for everybody else, not fine for me, because when it's mine, that's a baby. So I went ahead and had my baby. And as time went on, I became aware that, well, if it's my baby, then it's Lynn's baby. It's your baby. These are real children that we're talking about. I can't say that it's okay for me to keep mine and everybody else to kill the children. And I slowly came around to a pro-life position. But it wasn't because people were on the street with signs waving and showing big pictures of fetuses, bloody fetuses. That was never going to get to me. I had to be persuaded through my own experience in life. And so I think you have to work with people individually and help them on their path, because most people will start out young with maybe more liberal values, and as they age, they gain wisdom. And you can help them gain wisdom by being a questioner and being curious. and being truly honoring of their position, because they do hold it sincerely. Everybody does. So that's kind of how I approach it. I don't try to berate people. Mustard, Alaska, we try to point out contradictions and the ironies where, for instance, in Anchorage right now, we have a reporter who you may have seen on social media. She says she has some pictures of the mayor and they're in compromising positions. And we are 24 hours since that occurred, and the newspaper has still not written about it. And KTU, the other media station, has not broadcast about it. And Channel 4, Coastal Alaska, never said a word about it. And the woman is in jail now. The reporter's in jail. She's in the prison. She's in Highland Mountain Correctional Center. I just point these things out to say, Must Read Alaska exists to keep the mainstream media on its toes and to make sure that the other side is told. And when we see that, how quick they are to go after our side, and yet 24 hours after this has happened, it's like nothing occurred at all. So that's what my mission is. I like to be the point of the spear out there. I take plenty of arrows. I take plenty of knives in my back, and that's okay. This is the big collective idea that we have, this democracy, this Republican democracy that we have, where we have representatives in Congress, we have representatives at the local level, we elect them through the democratic process, and I honor everyone's opinion and hope that we get the best ideas forward, because that's what we're trying to advance, the very best ideas for how we govern ourselves. So with that, it's probably used up my time, and I just want to thank you so much, and thank you, Nicholas Begich and Nicholas Begich IV, as well, for joining us today.
Suzanne, if you don't mind, if you have the time, because we got some time, do you want to talk about some of the state races, what's going on at the state level, especially with the House and the Senate, especially the House?
All right, we'll just talk about a few of the House races that are in play. As you saw, we had a great Republican, conservative showing up during the primary. And interesting to see that we sort of removed some of the people who said that they would be Republicans and that they would join with Republicans and support our values, especially the PFD was a very big deal in the primary. We've advanced some of those candidates. The Democrats are fighting hard to flip those seats. So they inserted some players who maybe won, like for instance Suzanne LaFrance. She did not run in the primary for District 28. Her associate Adam Lees ran. He was holding her place. And then when James Kaufman won that primary for the Republicans over Jennifer Johnston, then they pulled out Adam Lees and they plugged in Suzanne LaFrance. So she's on the Assembly. She's running against James Kaufman for District 28. It is a contested seat. That seat could go either way. There are a lot of people in District 28 who, I've seen head nodding back here, a lot of people in District 28 who work at the university system. Those are typically going to be Democratic voters. So Suzanne LaFrance is an operative at the Democratic Party. She really raises money well, and she's got a lot of allegiances, and if you look through her APOC reports, it's all Democrats. And so that's a seat that is very important. The House, if everything breaks our way, we can get 24 seats, but everything is not going to break our way. That one might be in play. Down in Ketchikan, Nicholas mentioned Daniel Ortiz. He's the fake independent who caucuses with the Democrats, and Leslie Becker is challenging him, and actually she's giving him a run for his money. There's some polling down there that says that she's within striking distance. She polls at about 43%, and he polls at about 47%. After the question is asked, do you support somebody who caucuses with the Democrats, and do you know that Dan Ortiz caucuses with the Democrats? After you ask people that question, they say, no, we don't support it. We didn't know that. It's impossible for us to think that people didn't know that, but they don't. They really don't pay attention like we do. So that seat, we may pick up the Ketchikan seat, and that's District 36. We may, well, obviously we picked up District 15 in the primary. We removed Gabrielle Ledoux. She was indicted, she's been indicted, she's not been indicted, she's in an indictment stage for voter fraud, for having falsely registered people in her district. and we've got David Nelson there, and he's running for District 15, and I think that's a pretty easy pickup for us. So we're going to pick up a few. I'm a little bit worried about District 31, Sarah Vance. Kelly Cooper has outraced her significantly on the Kenai Peninsula. Kelly Cooper is another false flag independent, and she's outraced her with a lot of Democrat money and union money. So that's one that we kind of have to watch. I think Sarah Vance will be okay, Representative Vance will be okay, but when you're being outraced, it's about 3-1. It is something you take seriously. Believe it or not, Paul Dale down there in District 29, he's a Democrat, false flag independent. He has outraised Ben Carpenter significantly, and it is not even by a little bit. It's by a landslide. He's got $40,000, and I think Ben Carpenter raised like $9,000. But it is a very red district, so as long as everybody turns out, that will be fine. We'll be fine in that district. So I think that the one race that I want to watch is whether or not Lance Pruitt will once again retain his seat in District 27. He's running against somebody who is a very hard left environmentalist Democrat in Liz Snyder, and she is very much like Ivy Sponholz. She's very much part of the squad type mentality, and we want to make sure that Lance gets over the line. So I'm losing my voice. So I think I'm going to close up now and just want to thank you very much for having me. And invite me back again next year. We'll do this again. Thank you, everybody.
Do you have any place that you could recommend where you can find out about all the judges that are on the Alaska ballot right now?
Yes, the place that you can find it at is in your election pamphlet, and that should be in your mailbox already. It's about this thick. I brought one with me, but they're all in there. And I don't know about you, but I usually vote no on all my judges. The only judge that I voted yes on this last time was Michael Corey. And I voted yes on him because he was a Republican-appointed judge that had been attacked by a Democrat campaign to remove a Republican judge. And I saw what they did to him, and I voted yes for him. But in general, I vote no just to send the message that our judicial system is a mess. The way we appoint our judges is awful. Please don't ever blame Michael Dunleavy for appointing liberal judges. He has no choice. He's offered 2 or 3, and they're always going to be liberal by the Judicial Council. They will always be liberals. The way we do it has to be changed, and we need to get him to work on some judicial reform and get that in front of the voters. And we need to stop the way we're doing judges, or we're never going to win. Right?
You just brought up the election pamphlets that are supposedly already supposed to be in our mailboxes. I know out in the area that I am in, many of us have yet to ever see one arrive in our mailbox. I personally have yet to even see an election pamphlet show up at my mailbox.
How many have gotten in your mailbox pamphlets?
Okay, mine just arrived yesterday, Bruce, so I mean, I think they're still arriving, but I don't doubt that a bit. But again, we are early in, and we're starting to vote. Now, the ballots are starting to come in, so we are starting to vote. But we should all be encouraged by the local elections that we saw this last week, where the conservatives came out in a large turnout across the state, and we flipped a couple of places like Fairbanks, we went a lot more conservative, and Kenai stayed conservative, went a little bit more conservative. Even Homer stayed a little bit more conservative than it could have gone. It could have gone liberal. Places that went more liberal, Juneau went hard Antifa, Sitka went hard Antifa. Those places are just kind of lost causes for us almost. But Haines went more conservative. So we're seeing a little bit of red wave, a lot more enthusiasm on our side, and a lot of people are really waking up. So thank you very much. I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to stick around, and if you have questions, just approach me, okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
On the issue of judges, and I'm the same way as Suzanne. It's a no vote. This is me personally. It's a no. Senator Stoltz, and I'm trying to remember House side, have tried putting forward a constitutional amendment to change this judiciary, how judges are picked and given to the governor. And that is something that has to get done. And I know that Governor Dunleavy is pushing for a constitutional amendment. I know that Shelley Hughes is for that. I know several others, in the Valley, that are for that. We have got, because right now, the way, and correct me if somebody knows that I'm wrong, please correct me. The way it works is you have, I think, 3 lawyers that are in that council.
3 judicial.
And 2 straight civilians. And so the lawyers are the ones that pick the judges. And then the governor has to pick, has to go there. What I would hope will happen with this constitutional amendment is that my personal opinion is to do away with that whole commission. That's my personal opinion. And then just let the governor, like the President of the United States does, nominate. So there's got to be a better way of doing this. Because we keep, what's the definition of insanity? Keep doing the same thing over and over again, expect a different result. And we just cannot continue with the judiciary that we have right now. Because, when ballot measure 2 got before the judges, and they said, and the fight against it was because it's so multifaceted that it wasn't a single issue, and they go, oh yeah, it's about elections. And they allowed it through. 25, I think it's 25 pages that nobody has ever read on the ranked voting. Nobody's even read it. But these judges turned around and said, oh yeah, it follows the rules about elections. So we've got to be able to, that has got to come to a screeching halt. And we've got to regain constitutional judges. I'm not saying conservative judges, I'm not saying liberal judges, I'm not talking moderate judges, I'm talking people that actually read and understand what the Constitution says and what the law says and interpret that meaning of that law versus the Constitution. That has got to happen. And to me, that's a big issue as well. I was kind of hoping to have a surprise, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen because there might have been a possibility of Don Young being here today. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. What I do want to kind of give you guys an update on the China virus. Right now, why isn't this thing not running?
Your TV screen timed out, so you can turn it off and just turn it on.
Okay, just.
I'd like to thank you all for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and share this video. Please go to my website, politidic.com, and click the donate button. Help us make sure we can do these kind of videos more often. We do really appreciate you all with us here today. Again, don't forget to like and share. Thank you all for being here.